Hi everybody, this is Chloe Hudson with World Peace Projects. Thank you for joining me. It has been a minute since I have posted and connected with you guys. I miss you very much. I have gone through so much stuff. There's so much to talk about. But today I want to focus this video on a very huge loop pattern that I have recently healed in my being, and that is wrapped around abandonment. So I find it really intriguing because this week in my healings with clients, this has been a theme for them. And I just went through an extremely heart-wrenching 5-week process of recognizing and healing a life cycle of abandonment. So I figured it would be really nice for me to share with you what happened with me, what I went through, and how I healed it, and the ongoing work, in case this is something that you suspect you've been experiencing or you know you are, and you just feel trapped in it. If you are interested in more one-on-one personal healing coaching classes, please visit my website, worldpeaceprojects.com. I would love to see you there. So I've taken some notes. You might see my eyes go down every few moments to take a peek at this. And I want to go through this process with you. This is probably one of the most intimate shares I'm going to offer you guys because it has a lot of personal details on my life and my upbringing. And I feel like I'm in a place where what I want to start sharing and teaching and, excavating with you guys is stuff that I cannot do unless I become very open and transparent and vulnerable. So, I will delete all negative comments as usual. And I'm just basically going to start sharing with you guys what I've gone through in my life. So it helps hopefully for you guys to grasp these concepts a little bit better. Understand that if you've had these experiences, you're absolutely not alone, and there is a way through and out, right? Okay, so I have just recently gone through a heart-wrenching breakup that I initiated, and as soon as we broke up, I immediately had regret, which helped me realize that I have been cycling through in all of my relationships abandonment issues. All of my relationships have ended and been ruined, for the most part, because of my abandonment loop cycle and the way I was playing these out. So we've talked about altars before. I haven't really gone into detail explaining what all that is, and I will do that in an upcoming video. But basically right now, I'll say aspect or altar, and what I mean by that is a fracture point in me. A part of my personality that had trauma at some point in my life and fractured off, just like if you break a vase and there's little shards of glass. They have only their little experience, their little time stamp of what they went through, and there's nothing more in that. And when I move or anybody moves through the energy of the fracture, all you have is that tiny little scope of what's on the memory of that glass shard. So that's what I mean by aspect or altar, okay? So basically, I have this breakup and I realize very quickly, because I suddenly go into a panic mode that I need him back, I want him back, right? I realize what I'm doing because, this is my work. I'm intimate with this stuff. I've looked at this before around abandonment, but sometimes it takes a while for your being to want to grab something or understand it, be willing, what have you. So I'm going to go through my process with you and what I discovered. I have been spending 1 to 5 hours every day for the last 5 weeks working to heal this. I'm going to share the modalities I've used with you. And I chose to hit it that hard because once I saw it, I absolutely refuse to play out this loop in any relationship ever again. It has been devastating to not only my inner being, but also in my love life, in my intimacy. And it's also going to come out in other relationships, right? Okay, so what I noticed pretty quick, I'm just looking at my notes and I might hop around a little bit, is I identified two main aspects or alters. One I call the panic child, and the other one I call the ice queen. So the panic child is one that came out really clearly once I initiated the breakup, and then there's that separation time, right? And suddenly my entire being goes into a deep panic. So the panic child, what I identified is the emotional signatures, the frequency signatures, we've talked about this, is torture, anguish, no satiation. And what I mean by that is I registered that through some of the modalities in the work I've been doing and things other professionals have been talking about. And I thought about this on and off my whole life. And I knew that there was something that I knew that this has affected me in a deep way, but I couldn't put my finger on it because this isn't my focus of work. But I personally was not breastfed as an infant. And I know that must have huge ramifications on not just my physiological body, but my hormonal, emotional body, what have you. So I've been doing a lot of biofield tuning healings that I absolutely love. One of my friends turned me on to. And I've been doing that in conjunction with my emotion code healing that I also do for myself, and then my inner journeying. So I'll compile 3 types of modalities in one and do it all at the same time. One of the biofield tuning healings I was listening to, the woman was talking about how people that were not breastfed do not understand satiation. They were never satiated. They never got to fall asleep on the boob, know what it's like to be full, and then be content from that fullness. So because of it, it causes a lot of issues often in all types of relationships. One doesn't know when to stop eating, when to get out of bad relationships, when to quit a bad job. You know, and then you go into this fight or flight around getting that need met because you never had that before. So that came up, no satiation, right? And then the panic I was feeling was very physiological. So I could tell once I registered this piece of it that the panic child, one version of them is an infant. It's that literal body, primordial feeling of like, oh my God, where's the food? Where's the satiation? I need it now. That's all I know. It's in my makeup and I'm not getting it. So that was the frequency signature of the experience. I also registered that the panic child experiences a lot of clinging, confusion, and fawn. What I mean by fawn is, we've got the flight, fight, freeze, fawn, the fawn energy in that. Also, another aspect of the panic child is 3 or 4, where I had a lot of covert trauma at that time, and then 6 and 8. So there's a lot of victimhood around being bullied and yearning for attention. Then the other end of the spectrum is the Ice Queen. Now the Ice Queen, she's 13 years old, give or take. Her frequency identifiers are sexual abuse, a lot of covert sexual abuse at that time, sex kitten grooming. So now we're getting into deeper level of the covert stuff. If you know about that, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, I'll explain it in another video. Her energetics from this type of experience of what it takes to groom a sex kitten and go into that sexual abuse and everything around that, the emotional turmoil is like a cyclone. That's the best way I can experience it. Her fracture has a lot of manipulation and game playing, because that type of grooming, if you think about, maybe sex kitten doesn't coin it, but let's think of a seductress, right? There's a lot of deep mind level games there. There's a lot of manipulation in those types of tactics. And if we're pinning her at 13 years old, preteen, there's a lot of that going on already anyway, right? Because they're pressing boundaries, they're learning what they can and can't do, they think they're smarter than everybody else, that type of thing, right? And of course, deep hate and animosity towards her abusers, which gets projected out at this point because it's so repressed, is an apathy, basically cold, calculated, okay? But underneath all that, which is very hard for me, it was very hard to penetrate her shield, is a deep, deep trauma and horror in the body, and full disconnection, right? Because going through those types of things, I just don't believe it's possible to stay in your body. And why would you want to when you're experiencing that stuff? So what I saw real quick as I stood back and looked at the way this last relationship played out for me is that the Ice Queen handles the panic child, okay? So Ice Queen comes out, she's giving apathy in my relationship. I'm moving through her energy in the last month probably of our relationship. And I'm withdrawing, I'm being, fairly apathetic, I'm being detached, I'm being kind of cold, very much not my natural nature at all, right? And then usually my style would be to stay in it because I won't know when it's a good time to end the relationship. But he actually initiated a conversation around it, so I took that. And then there's a cut. And I'm in apathy, right? So it's like, okay, here we go. But as soon as it happens, the Ice Queen pokes the panic child, and now it's her turn. So now the panic child comes up, and that's all she knows. How can she get this back? How can she cling, right? So I started seeing the dynamics between these two aspects. The Ice Queen handles the panic child, knows when to bring her out, knows when to step back in front and take back over, right? Okay, so I've been working on, this type of stuff for 20 years because this is what I do. It's my passion point, right? And my mentor told me in one of our last sessions, because I was focused on partnership, this is actually before this relationship, and I had been celibate pretty much and single for 3 years, I guess, but I was ready for partnership. So I'm looking at what's blocking that. And of course, I'm starting to see inner child stuff. And at one point, my mentor says to me, something to the effect of like, what you're explaining to me, what happens and what comes up for you in relationship is that inner child fracture, right? And she says to me, any healthy man is going to be repulsed and repelled and repulsed by that because they're not a pedophile, right? So if your energy starts acting as a child, if they're healthy, which you want them to be, they're going to withdraw from that. They're not going to like that. And that was a huge epiphany for me because I hadn't realized at that point how much that comes up for me in relationships. And then also I felt a bit content by that because it took away the feeling that I'm repelling men, I'm repulsing men at certain points, and rather they're healthily repulsed and repelled by the child that's coming out, the neediness that's coming out, which is good, right? And I wouldn't want that anyway in a healthy relationship. So the way it all played out is I'm noticing Ice Queen scouts out her ability to set the stage, right? She starts moving in, slowly becoming apathetic. It's a slow burn, so I don't really notice it. And when I'm in, or we're in, our alters or aspects, we're in their mindset. We're seeing through their views, we're feeling through their emotions and their perspectives. So there goes the mind telling me all sorts of things. Ooh, we're not compatible. This is happening. I don't like this. I'm going to justify this and this and this. And everything is validated because that's what the mind likes to do, but validated from her point of view. And I'm totally in it, not registering that this is her, this isn't my truth, right? So once things end, she presses the panic child. There's a withdrawal, there's a cling, and there's always a sabotage, okay? Key to finding an aspect or an alter is look at the sabotages that you have propelled in your life. That will absolutely show you an alter or a fracture, okay? So she freaks out, panic child freaks out, then takes over until that focal person brings their energy back to some capacity to be vulnerable again, to be intimate or be open or reconnect in any form. And then the Ice Queen jumps back out and withdraws again somehow, right? Maybe it's not extreme, but then starts this really unhealthy push-pull trauma bonding cycle, okay? Now, this was super difficult for me because I'm in it, I'm recognizing I'm doing it, I can't quite stop it. And I realized that I have framed the entire relationship towards the end around the Ice Queen's view, which is like, oh no, because that means I'm not seeing it clearly. I'm not recognizing the difference between my true emotions and the aspects emotions, right? They're getting all mucked up. So now I'm really unclear of how I feel about this person and about what we had or what we have in our relationship. So I quickly tell myself, okay, you've got to figure this out. And first recognize the huge, massive karmic blessing that he's offering you, that you're offering each other around learning this lesson. And do not squander that opportunity or dishonor or disrespect them any further or yourself any further with this contract, because this is a painful contract for both of us. And I'm going to utilize it, and I'm going to benefit from it, I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to be very grateful that we played out this karmic loop because it's the final chapter, right? So what do? Okay, well, here are the steps that I took. First, you recognize the loop, right? I've recognized my pattern. I see, oh my gosh, I'm playing out abandonment. And then you make a conscious decision. Are you going to heal it? Or do you not know how? Is it not time? That's okay. If you're not ready, that's fine. But it's really important to be honest and transparent with yourself about what's going on. I chose and made a very conscious decision that I was absolutely going to heal this, and I refused to ruin any other relationship or further ruin this relationship, you know, by proliferating it. And I will honor the contract and the sacrifice that we have both now made for the potential of this healing space. Third, you connect with the aspects. Now, this is more difficult for a lot of people, right? Because this is the inner journey work. If you don't know how to connect with your faltered pieces, I teach all about this. I do healings on this constantly. I've got courses on it too. I'd be happy to help you do this. It's once you get the practice down and the interconnection and the interoceptivity, the ability to feel your inner self, then it's quite easy if you're patient and you're quiet and you listen. Now, once you identify the alters or the aspects, then you need to identify, or what I chose to do is identify the signature frequencies of their feelings, right? So once you connect with these aspects of these fractured pieces, then they're already in deep real-time trauma. So it's super pivotal for you to offer them empathy, compassionate communication, safety and trust, and allowance for themselves to connect with themselves. If you don't know how to do this dialogue, I highly suggest you read the very short but wonderful book, Nonviolent Communication or Compassionate Communication. This is a fantastic, lifelong language that you can learn. I trained in it for 1 year, and I barely scratched the surface because it really is like learning a new language. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? But it's a fantastic structure to help you offer yourself, your inner child, or anyone else you're talking to, really deep connection through communication where they feel safe to be received and heard. And that is a huge need that most of us do not have met. Once your aspect feels safe with you, then you can start to just listen to their story. They might show you in images and memories and visions. You're probably going to feel it inside your being. So the biggest trick here is to recognize the difference between their feelings, their thoughts, their experiences, and yours, because after all, you're feeling it in yourself, right? So when I say identify the frequency signatures of their feelings, it's like, for example, with the panic child, I'm realizing that the energy I'm feeling right now of panic the intensity and the concentration of this feeling doesn't match the level of the energy of the situation. It's way too potent. It's way too much to seem on par with what's actually going on. It's like that freak out mode, right? Well, I'm not dying, you know, I'm not in a situation where it warrants that level of panic. And that is a key tell for me to say, oh, wait a minute. I'm being triggered by this situation, but really this panic is coming from the babe who is hungry and is not getting the nutrients she needs, or the, you know, toddler who's going through trauma or covert abuse or whatever it is, right? That warrants mass panic. But my situation, heartbreak, yes, horrible. Don't wish it on anybody. It's the worst experience I've ever had. But it's not the same experience as this, right? Okay, so you identify the frequency signatures, the emotions, the feelings, the triggers, the experiences, so that when they're happening, usually they're going to happen, and then you're going to realize and look back and say, ah, it was that. I didn't catch it, but now I've noted it and I can go back. And then you start catching it in real time when they come up. And then once you've received their story and you understand what's going on, I at least, effort to have a constant, continual connection and dialogue with them throughout my day. Because until I've healed this part of me, they're up on the forefront. There is the propensity for me now to move through this energy again throughout my day, be in victimhood of abandonment, and perceive all of my experiences now in life for that, you know, that time period through this, and again project it onto them. And so how do you keep from projecting the loop outward? Well, you turn towards them and you receive them. You let them bring it to you, and you now parent the aspect of the inner child, or you be their friend, you be what they need for them. So as soon as it comes up, even if you're face to face with this other person that you have been projecting it on, inside your being, the aspect comes up, you turn inward, and then you now take care of them and talk to yourself inside your being, right? What do they need in this moment? What is going to help them feel safe enough that they're not going to push through you and come out and create another sabotage or whatever it is, right? So you're constantly dialoguing with them. You're constantly helping to feed their needs and assist them while the healing process is at work. And then once you have connected with them, you receive their story, you do whatever your version is of reverse engineering the timeline, transcending or transmuting the timeline. It's one of my clients likes to call it. I have a whole course on this, but this can also be just you receiving the experience, going back to the memory or what happened or even how you felt, and then helping that part of you to release the emotions. A million modalities on this, right? Or change the scenario, rewrite it, and let that be true to you, however you want to do it. But they need to be able to bring up that trauma, heal it, and purge it, release it, get it out, right? Okay. And then you keep digging, dig, dig, dig. After all, this is a lifelong pattern, right? You gauge the process by the triggers, and for me, this was a heartache, right? So the level of heartache. And I identify the difference between the true present moment, authentic heartache, and the anguish of abandonment. Now, this one was really tricky because throughout my entire relationship, I'm still in this loop of abandonment. It might not be triggered or playing out, but because I have this instilled in my being, I'm going to view and experience intimate love through this lens. It's going to be weighted and measured in this way. So once I start to realize, oh my God, I have this huge lifelong pattern of abandonment that I've been playing out, I no longer have a full grasp on what pure, more authentic love is. So now I have to double back and question, what have I been experiencing? What in what I'm feeling and realizing about my experience with this person, you know, what the whole time was that, the abandonment? And what's more authentic and true? And how am I framing what I experienced through either the abandonment or real feelings. And then when I start to excavate and clear and purge, now the grief and sadness that's coming up, what part of this is authentic and what is still the anguish of the abandonment? That was very tricky for me. And that's still a battle I'm experiencing because I've done a mass amount of healing on it. And for the most part, the panic child is satiated. She's doing pretty good. But now the 13-year-old is, struggling. She's having issues. So we're still working. And that one's tricky, right? So I'm still kind of confused. And at 13, that's when you start getting, sometimes love obsessed, or you have these, you get fixated on things and you're very selfish and things like this. So now I'm trying to figure out that frame of reference and the victimhood in that too. It can be very extreme because especially for females, it's a super hormonal time, everything is huge and it's all life's over, this kind of energy, right? So I'm still trying to clarify what's what, right? Now, I will tell you this, what usually happens, and what definitely happened with this human, because he's extremely intuitive and perceptive, even though he doesn't register himself that way, is as soon as I cleared, I think the close to last bigger piece, as soon as I did it, his energy shifted towards me. And I didn't say anything to him, of course, but I noticed. That is super intriguing, right? Because the energetic dynamics shifted so completely. Now, I do want to tell you a little bit about how my aspects anchored. I'm not going to go into huge detail about it, but I think it's important to know, because once you've identified alters and aspects, in my experience, and I've been doing this 20 years and I've always been working on fractures and aspects this whole time, is to find the root fracture point, right? At least the root fracture point in this life, or the one that's coming up the most. It might not even be the first one, but it's the most acute, let's put it this way, okay? So the panic child, I already told you, there's that huge piece around not being breastfed, okay? So that's a big one. That's a long time period. That's, the whole beginning experience of my life. So that one runs really deep, and I'm still exploring that because I know there's so much more to that. And that one was profound for me. And the way I found for me personally to help that aspect, because she's an infant, right, is I gave her the divine breast. So whenever she's coming up and panicking, and it's very physiological, just like when a baby is screaming, I've just found my best way to support her is just visualize her feeding on, the bosom of divinity, right? The most ultimate satiation one can receive, and just being with her and letting her satiate and falling asleep there and finding peace and feeling loved and cared for and nurtured, okay? That's what works best for that one. Now, the 3-4-year-old aspect, this is when a significant amount of a lot of the covert trauma for me started very young. I have memories in the crib, right? Though there was a big amount of it starting at that age point. So that one's different, because now you're getting into, recog memories of that type of covert experiences where, there's very specific and decisive fracturing and all sorts of trauma. So I just have to be very present with her and allow her to show me what fracture's coming up, what experience is this, what happened, where were you taken, do that healing work. In this, for me, because of her age and her innocence, I just have to be very present with her and work to be very non-judgmental and triggered by what she's experiencing, because also at that age, her full range of emotions isn't intact yet. So I don't want to impose my horror or my emotions around what she's showing me or helping me remember as well. I just want to be there for her, understood how she experienced it so I can help heal that. I don't want to add to it. And if this type of work comes up in you, please take care, because it is very easy to over-traumatize yourself or re-traumatize yourself if you go digging when you have covert, satanic ritual abuse or things like this, okay? I have a slew of this in my history, and I've trained myself in it. I work with trained professionals, and even then, it's a very slippery slope. So this absolutely, if you're hitting on that note, you need to work with a professional, and you need to take it slow. This is absolutely not the type of work to rush into at all, at all. You just, there's no point in re-traumatizing yourself, throwing yourself back into a shock fracture, because once you access these memories, usually go right back into shock, out of body all over again. Here we go, right? So, but anyway, that's one of the versions, that age point, 3, 4, also the age when my parents got divorced, right? So that's happening too, a lot around that. And then the other piece that came up super strong was from around 6 to 8 years old is when the men in black used to come and visit every night. So, and I have a lot of memory of that. That memory never left me. They came every night, and I remember a lot of the different experimentations and the trauma and the torture. There were a lot of surgeries at that time. There was a lot of things going on, testing on my bones, all sorts of stuff like that. And if any of you guys have that memory or those experiences, you know that that's straight apathy with them. There's, you know, that one's pretty brutal. And so that one has been really difficult to help her heal. There's a lot of PTSD in that aspect with those experiences. And again, just being present, remembering, assisting her to heal, allowing myself to be in it, just diving into the horror of those experiences and working to remember and heal and clear and purge and release in that whole process. Now, the 13-year-old, because she's already gone through all of that the panic child went through, right? And she's now in a prime experience where she's very covertly, right? Very covertly being groomed for sex kitten, lots of sexual abuse on that level. And for me, unfortunately, I was a prime candidate for complete mind swipe. Man, I mean, they put me out, mind swipe me in a split second, so quick. So there's a lot of fractured detachment around what happened. The thing that she can put her finger on most is that seething, cyclonic hate for men, unfortunately. And I went through a lot of that healing in my past, you know, so that comes up a lot because of her experience. So the cyclonic energy of the 13-year-old aspect very much is akin to the obscurus in the movie The Fantastic Beasts and the Cursed Child, if you guys have seen that. That is very much her experience, and most likely the inner turmoil that's happening in those of us that have gone through that type of covert grooming. And so like today, I'm connecting with her still, right? Of course, it's an ongoing process. And I'm asking her to show me like what's alive in you right now. What are you currently sitting in? What do you need to show me? And she shows me this point in my life where I'm about 12, 13, and I went anorexic at the time. I was anorexic in middle school for a good year, maybe more. And it was pretty extreme at that time because I dropped like 20 pounds, but I'd also grown almost like a foot, it seemed. So it looked super extreme. But I had this pattern, and my middle school was super handled. Sometime I'll go into this, like incredible stories around this. But you know, the area of the town I grew up in at that time period was very much a project town, and I was called out a lot. a lot of different authority figures were very specific. I didn't know what it was then, but now I get it, right? They had it out for me. From my frame of reference at that time, I didn't know why, right? But it was over the top, some of the stories I'll tell you. Not just the child feeling like they're being, you know, pinpointed, but there was extreme cases in this. And so I used to come home and turn a poster over, and on this poster, I had drawn stick figures. I had drawn each family member, and then like teacher, friend, and other. And then, you know, I'd come home and I'd be filled with rage, and I'd throw markers at whichever one represented my rage in the moment, you know. So I show myself the image of that, and just like the image of other, and it's like blobbed, you know, all the way through to the wall with marker. And that type of just turmoil of like, how do I express this in a way that it's healthy and okay, right? So we're constantly working together still. But I finally had the healing a few days ago of the panic child, which was huge for me. It was huge because it shifted me out of that very well-known common thing that women go into, you know, when they're feeling their partner pull away and detach, where they go into the panic and the neediness, right? And it put me in a state of peace and back into my empowerment and my self-love and my allowance of like, I'm safe, I'm good, I'm okay, right? I can regret and I can mourn, but I don't need this person to be right there. I enjoy that, I want that, but I'm good, I'm still happy. And that was huge because that was the piece I was missing. I also allowed myself in these 5 weeks to be completely immersed in my anguish, in my grief, and my trauma, which seemed very extreme probably to a lot of my friends. And to a certain level, because I'm dealing with the abandonment, it was over the top because, you know, when you're healthy, you're not going to feel or express that type of heartache in that way. It's not going to be so overtaking where you can't do your daily tasks, you can't function, right? But at the same time, it's very easy and common for most people to numb out, you know, or go into a sense of shock or not, you know, paying attention to it or not registering what's really going on. And when that happens, it lingers for a long time. It's always there, right? It can be there for years. And then one day, maybe it comes back up and you're like, whoa, where did this come from? That was ages ago. But, you know, I like to get in and do the work while it's fresh and raw and get out all of it in hopes that I don't have to go there again. I'm done. Because it's so intense when you're in that pressure cooker. But if you really do it efficiently and right, you are done and you're free. And it's great. And you actually can move on. And it's not going to come back around in that same way. And that's really important to me at this point. I find that it's way more efficient to, you know, sprint that mile and give that heart pounding out of your chest exhaustion than to do a fast-paced walk for the next year or whatever it is, right? It seems more in one go, but overall it's way less work. It's way less burdensome. It's way less taxing on the being, okay? So this is how I worked to heal my abandonment. Now, the things that I did to do this, the modalities I utilized, when it first happened, I immediately started doing Ho'oponopono, the Hawaiian forgiveness practice. There's a specific mantra to this and meditation to this. I did this for hours a day, forgiving myself, forgiving others, asking forgiveness of him, asking just forgiveness, 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 you know? And the basics of Ho'oponopono is, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And a huge piece of a more in-depth Ho'oponopono is basically taking responsibility to the extent of that, while it is difficult for me to forgive, I ask this of you now because I know that in a past life, I have done this to you or another, and it's simply coming back around. And that piece is really heavy to swallow for some, right? Because it's real easy for us to see what's happening to us or what we're perceiving happening to us and blame and project it out. And while it's very valid to feel any type of way you feel for things that are coming at you in your own experience, regardless of what they have done or put you through in your world, in your version, this has been attracted into your field, and in some form you have full responsibility from your experience and perspective of it. Not necessarily saying that, you know, everything that's happened to you, you did to them or somewhere else somehow, but the energy has come to you for a reason. You're experiencing it, and the only way, in my experience, to heal that is to take full responsibility for what I'm experiencing in my reality and dissipate the charge or the resistance or the upset or the anger around it. So Ho'oponopono was huge. I probably did Ho'oponopono, you know, I don't know, probably about 60 hours in the first week, right? I would sleep to it. I download a 8-hour Ho'oponopono and just put it on as I slept. And I just constantly did it. Then, as I already said, I did a lot of the biofield tunings, which are fantastic. I did a motion code, which I love to do. I did a lot of my soul journey. I did a lot of deep self-love. I have a very strong meditation practice, and I just sit and be with myself and listen to my aspects and what I needed. When I need to cry, let myself cry. You know, did a lot of past life timelines, came up all over the place. It was pretty amazing, actually. I live very close to the ocean. I'm blessed for that. So I got in the saltwater as much as I could. I was going every day for 2 weeks, and then, you know, maybe every other day, to give myself that connection with nature and that healing and being in the earth womb energy. My mantra was, I belong with myself. I belong with myself. I belong with myself. That was my daily mantra. It continues to be. I also binged watched tarot, which tarot is one of my guilty pleasures, right? And, you know, of course, because I'm in abandonment and I'm clinging, I'm doing a lot of cross-watching, right, around his stuff. And because I watched so much tarot, I had this realization, which many of you maybe already know, but I never thought of it before. And there's only very specific tarot readers I watch because I'm aware of their level of purity and intuition. So a lot of them I just know, definitely not filtering through your ego right now. But I have a handful that I really appreciate, and they're pretty amazing in their own right. But because I was watching so much of it, it was the first time, as a side note, I kind of realized, oh, so intriguing, because they're tapping into plausible timelines, right? So at a certain point, you know, when you're seeing the theme across the board with different tarot readers, I could see the, let's say 3 or 4 plausible timelines that might play out in this week. And I thought that was really interesting, because then I can read the frequency signature and make my alterations. But interestingly enough, actually, tarot was the way I registered that I'm in an abandonment pattern right now. That's how I coined what pattern is happening. And then also, you know, the parts of me that needed to heal and how they were going to heal. A lot of things were revealed for me in that way. But I'm really into astrology. I'm into that type of stuff, right? I've always loved the occult, and I know how to filter it as best as as possible. Take it all with a grain of salt, right? And then another thing that happened last week is, surprisingly, because these don't happen to me much anymore, but I did go through a physical healing crisis. And when it was happening, I was really intrigued. I was like, whoa, what's happening right now? It lasted a good 4 days. And my intuition said, basically, you had the build up, right? Now you're doing the clearing. So now the volcano is exploding. Now you're purging. Now you're dumping. Dump all that negative black goo. Get all that stuff out of you, right? Purge it out. Let the obscurus, let the cyclone release the pressure valve now. So I allowed my body to go through that cleanse and purge. And now I'm feeling really good. And now I feel like when any sadness comes up, it's authentic, right? It's not coined by the abandonment anymore, or the victim, or the yearning or the neediness. It's more real, you know, and it's sweeter that way for me. And it's manageable. And I feel happy again, which is huge, right? So if you would like any assistance with any types of, you know, healing around abandonment, like accessing your altars, all of this type of stuff, I would love to be there for you. worldpeaceprojects.global, worldpeaceprojects.com. I am back, guys. I am obviously posting this video on YT, though as I have said, very soon I will be shifting to Bitchute and Rumble, will be my top two probably for a while, unless you guys have any suggestions of freedom speak type clean platforms. Okay, so I hope you're doing great. Love to hear your comments. If you're rude, if you're nasty, they're deleted. And please like, share these videos. It's good to see you guys again. Take care. Bye.